Piglet's Big Game has gained some ridiculous popularity over the last few weeks due to some insane comparisons to Resident Evil and Silent Hill, so let's check this out. Piglet's Big Game is a 2003 video game for kids, based on Piglet's Big Movie. For kids. For some reason the music goes crazy in this. The game has blown up on Twitter, primarily after some tracks got shared and everyone freaked out making those Silent Hill comparisons and asked why Piglet had a survival horror game. Why indeed? Since then, like every game that has any kind of media relevance, Piglet's Big Game skyrocketed in price and is now ridiculously in demand. Anyone who pays more than £10 for this is going to regret it down the line when it inevitably becomes worthless again next year, but hey ho. I bought it. I got lucky enough to find it in a bundle of 8 kids games on eBay for £25. Among this bundle were a few other games worth £10 each, so it would have been a good deal even before Piglet shot up from £3 to £100. Either way, I've got the PS2 copy of the game. It actually launched on GameCube first, but they're the same game fundamentally, unlike the PC game which was a point-and-click adventure. Yeah, there was a weird trend of PC games getting super different ports, especially with movie tie-ins back in the early 2000s. I think it was a direct response to a boom in piracy back then. I don't know why that would stop piracy, because if you make a worse game, people just won't buy it or pirate it. You may as well have not made the PC port. Anyway, Piglet's Big Game on PlayStation 2. What exactly is this thing? I am playing this myself, but it's on a real PS2 for that authentic experience rather than emulated, and I don't have a capture card. So this footage isn't actually mine for the record, just know that what I'm saying was written during my playthrough of this game, and I tried to find footage that would match that as best as I could. Our story begins with a nice, friendly looking cutscene of Piglet walking around the 100-acre wood and seeing all of his friends go about their business. Kanga and Roo, Owl, Eeyore, Rabbit, Tigger, and of course, Winnie the Pooh. Piglet then hallucinates something scary, as you do, and then runs into Christopher Throbbing for some moral support. The human boy tells the little pig to get over himself and face his fears, to which Piglet's immediate response is to move out and leave the 100-acre woods and all of his friends. This is where we take control of the little pink creature. Turns out the first level isn't actually a level. The menu is essentially an open area, which is really cool, I like it. I wish Piglet could run, but whatever, this is for kids apparently. Anyway, you get to this telescope eventually and you can invade your friend's privacy by going into their dreams and seeing their darkest fears. Winnie the Pooh, like the fat poo he is, dreams about honey and other sugary foods. Can't blame him, to be honest. Now he's dreaming about an uncooked pig. Maybe you have to give him salmonella from within his dreams? Anyway, it looks like the goal is to kick stuff till you get cookies from them. You can cheer Piglet up by having him talk to Christopher Throbstifer, which I guess is the health meter? Like how scared he is. I'm writing this as I go, so right now I genuinely don't know what we're doing. Anyway, Piglet is scared, but he's surrounded by candy, so how scared can he be? At one point I got 20 cookies and Piglet did a little pose and then nothing else happened. I mean, I guess I do that too, but I've got a social disorder. I thought this guy's whole deal was that he was just a pig. Hey look, I mean, I better not discriminate. Pigs can be on the spectrum too, I suppose. Anyway, after kicking everything in sight, you eventually find the Pooey bear who reads lines to you as if they just didn't print that line on the script and Jim Cummings had to improvise but really didn't want to. Anyway, Pooh is stuck and he needs you to find a Pooh stick to hit him with. Not hard to find that one really, it's just over here. So you help Winnie by getting him unstuck, melt some cotton candy, go in search of Rabbit because Winnie is a greedy sod who wants some more honey. But wait, there will be heffalumps. Scary elephant fellas, and this is where Piglet starts to get a little bit freaked out and the game begins to get a little bit scary. Suddenly he's in a room with a heffalump and has to run around. Eventually, after longer than I care to admit, I worked out that you had to go up to the scary purple elephant and stick your tongue out at him rather than just run away. This scares him so much that he becomes tiny. Yay. Then you find Rabbit, who doesn't care whether Piglet lives or dies, and he sends you to a bee's nest to get stung to death, I guess? I don't know. I then bought a brave face from one of those stands, which was just another Piglet screaming at my normal Piglet. I think this is sort of another attack against the monsters. Either way, I removed the bees from their hive just by moving some raspberries ever so slightly to the right, and yeah, sure. Now to get the honey. The combat in this game is basically a quick time event. If you fail it, Piglet gets a bit scared and then walks really slow or really fast if he's really scared, so you do want to avoid that. And now I've worked out fully that Christopher Throbinosis serves as the health replenisher, so that's cool. Anyway, we get the honey to Pooh, he's thankful, and we make it out alive. Woohoo! The game is definitely odd by this point, but so far it's kid friendly. I did notice a somewhat dark sounding music track at one point, but nothing too creepy. Yet. Next we go into Roo's dream where his mother neglects him and we have to go searching for him because he is lost, and honestly, I really like this world design. It's all drawn with crayons on cardboard, very creative, very childlike, which I guess makes sense if it's a child's dreams. Very bright as well. The survival horror gameplay is back though, with big enemies you can't run away from and tight claustrophobic battle moments. Anyway, you find Tigger and you actually get to play as him, which was quite fun. You bounce around and avoid being seen by Heffalump, who has a vision triangle thing. This game really is a survival horror at heart, isn't it? The Heffalumps are kind of creepy creepy when they start running at you. You even have to hide in corners for the long things to walk past you when you're playing as Tigger. Anyway, eventually you find Rue in his house and you need to ask Kanga for a key, who explains you need to get some cookies. Now I think cookies are some sort of level gate thing. I think you need a certain number to beat the level or the game, maybe. I'm still working this out. So I went out in search of cookies, brought a new scary face, and went back to Kanga, found Rue, found Eeyore, fought a bee, fixed a ladder to get something from a high place for a child who's known for jumping particularly high on his own anyway. If that's his biggest fear, I think he's too sheltered and we need to introduce him to council tax. Or racism. Anyway, the level ends with a fight against a scary door and some lengthy pimps who introduce a kind of interesting combat mechanic. They cover their faces, so if you finish your attack before they emerge again, it does no damage. At this point, I can totally see the comparisons to horror survival games. The fixed camera angles make for slightly claustrophobic maps, the lack of ways to defend yourself is straight out of a survival horror, and the slow walking just doubles down on all of that. Couple all this with the overall theme of overcoming your deepest fears in your dreams, and you have a kid-friendly psychological horror game. And you know what? I'm all for it. The level is over and we move swiftly on to Owl's Dreams. You know what I just said about understanding the survival horror comparisons? Yeah, double that. Owl's level is a creepy library type dealio. Suddenly the visuals are far less childish and colourful and everything is a lot more grey and gothic, ripe for spooky scenarios. The annoying gopher tells me something, but frankly I wasn't listening, and I go and find Pooh, who's inexplicably in a cage. I pooed in a cage once, and that's why I'm no longer allowed in Romania. Anyway, you get to play as the big yellow bear now, and as you enter his first room you're hit with some menacing camera angles and glares from a couple of enemies. It's all still appropriate for kids in that the designs are colourful and silly, but man, at 6 or 7 years old this would have really freaked me out. Somehow a Winnie the Pooh game is tense. There's a joke somewhere about tensing for a poo or something, but I feel like I've already stooped low enough in this video, so I'll leave it for now. Anyway, you get ambushed in this part. It's really menacing, honestly. You have to stealth your way through a genuinely tricky part here. This took me 3 tries, which for a game designed for 3-year-olds either is poor level design or says a lot about my skills. Probably the latter. Opening up the gate, Piglet then traverses through the same area with some creepy music playing and has to fight some more heffalumps and play a game of chess. This whole area is just like the library from Resident Evil 2. It's really strange. The tonal shift from the last world to this is ridiculous. Anyway, Piglet then finds Owl, who seems to be having a senior moment or something, and Piglet has to go and find some pictures of him to restore his memory. I'm not fully sure, I wasn't listening anymore. At this point, I'm getting real Coraline vibes from the visuals and music, in a good way. Coraline is one of the best animated films ever made. In fact, it's probably one of the best films ever made, so being compared to that in any way is a huge compliment. Still, such a weird tone for this game to have. Piglet's getting less scared though. He's facing his fears and becoming stronger as a result. See kids, there's a good message at the core of this game. I mean, between the utterly depressed donkey, the Tigger with a risky name, and the Type 2 diabetic bear, there is a semblance of positive learning to be had here. Piglet then finds some missing pictures for the owl, encounters a pirate island because why not, buys a new scary face, fights a tree, celebrates Hanukkah, and gets stalked by a dude with weird looking legs. And we're done! This level was unnerving. The mix of dark visuals and weirdly creepy music led to a genuinely unsettling set of rooms in a game that was only 20 minutes ago, really bright and light-hearted. Crazy. Anyway, I'm going to say something that no one else is saying. Everyone's talking about the creepiness of the game, and don't get me wrong, so am I. But it's kind of fun. Like, it's a good game. It's very much for kids with the fairly simple puzzle solving and whatnot, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I've got a cold, and I do, in case you couldn't tell by my voice. Turns out it wasn't tonsillitis, in case you saw my other video and were wondering. It's just man flu, but I did cough up a tonsil stone, so who knows. Anyway, I guess it's a slower paced game that until this point was quite nice and cheery. It's just what I needed while I'm not feeling the best. Nothing amazing, but for a quick tie-in game for kids, this could have been a lot worse. Anyway, on to Eeyore. Right. Okay. I get it now. This is properly nuts. Like, it's not mega gory or anything, it's just tonally about as far away as you can get from Winnie the Pooh as possible. Who signed off on this? Like, it's not bad, don't get me wrong. I just can't work out how a Winnie the Pooh game came out like this. Did the developers start work on a different game and have to reskin it halfway through or something? The music is so solemn yet slightly childlike and nice, and then suddenly, straight out of Silent Hill. I think I'm more confused than anything. Anyway, we make our way through a dark and creepy Halloweeny garden graveyard thing with all those pointy grey fences, and you get ambushed by some more of those Mad Hatter things. Now by this point I realised that unless defeating the enemies will unlock a door for you, you can actually just walk past them, so I've been doing that. The combat's not that engaging after all. We eventually make it underground into some spooky mansion devoid of all colour. This stuff is so weird. How is this a Piglet game? The music, as I've said before, is so dark and very fitting for the visuals, but not so much for a Pooh game. Anyway, you find Eeyore, that barrel of laughs, and he thanks you for noticing him. Hard not to when he's putting such a downer mood on the otherwise cheerful atmosphere in here. We chat about the lack of colour, and against his better judgment, Piglet offers to bring colour back into the life of a chronically depressed old man. Oh, naive little bacon. Let me know how that works out for you. This creepy world has 3 corridors you can go down to collect colours. It doesn't get any less bizarre. One room is a big empty dining hall with some enemies to fight, and oh good, the bathroom from Saw. Then we have a standard medieval corridor and a magic door to a scary piano room, and finally an outdoors area that you think could be a breath of fresh air, but the fog and colourless environment still sends a shiver down your spine. And this alarming music is getting worse. Crazy, man. Anyway, Piglet manages to get a glimpse of happiness into the life of Eeyore, only delaying his imminent... You know what? I'm not gonna say that one. I'm gonna move on. Now it's Rabbit's dream. This cynical sod probably has nightmares of people having fun. Actually, this level looks a lot brighter. Maybe this was all just a weird middle section that made no sense. There's a cave section, but aside from the ambient sounds being a little menacing, there's nothing too bad here. I quite like this level. A lot of fun to be had. Some of the battles get a little more interesting now, with some guesswork involved in pressing the right buttons. Rabbit is pretty selfish though. All he wants are carrots. Rabbits don't even like carrots that much. It's just one of those common misconceptions. You know, like how people think John Lennon wasn't the worst Beatle. Anyway, this level was fine. Back on track now. I imagine the middle section was dark so that it could be bookended by lighter-hearted parts of the game. If I were to go all film critic on this, I would say that Piglet's journey only ever gets darker, but his resilience to fear means that his own perception of the events seem lighter and nicer in comparison, meaning we're experiencing this voyage through the eyes of an unreliable narrator akin to the likes of Taxi Driver, and that Piglet's Big Game is actually a philosophical masterpiece purpose-built to instill the concept of think-piece media in children while their brains are still in their most formative stage. Similarly to children's video games of the time, the late 90s and the early 2000s, before developers really knew what they were doing with kids' media, Piglet's Big Game is representative of how media teaching children lessons through quality content has had a tremendous success on my own generation, in stark comparison to the later generations who, instead of growing up on educational yet fun media such as this, have been exposed to lifeless slop devoid of any real creative or intellectual substance, resulting in children knowing every single version of Skibbity Toilet but being unable to name all the countries in the United Kingdom or any bird other than a seagull. If I had a choice to grow up with a PS2 and play Piglet's Big Game, or have an iPhone and watch some kid unbox plastic against his will in one of the most disgraceful displays of parenting I've ever seen, learning nothing other than realistic levels of envy, I know which I'd pick. Anyway, Tigger's Nightmare is scary again, by the way. Kind of. Most of the level is a regular back and forth in a woodland setting, but then there's a creepy abandoned fairground and a haunted house. Yay. The music doesn't hold back again, either. It's weird as hell, and there's not a ton to say about this level. You just have to rescue Tigger's stripes because he's lost them. And again, the philosophical understanding of this is that Tigger's deepest fear is losing what makes him unique. What makes Tigger, Tigger. But the video game explanation is that chasing 5 little things around a haunted room is really sodding difficult and took me way too long to beat, so I'm done. Bye. Nope. Wait. Hang on. There's more. One final level involves Piglet rescuing his friends who are now being terrorized in real time. Nope. One final level involves Piglet rescuing his friends who are now being terrorized in real life, not just in their dreams. And you know what? It's really hard. You have to do this bit in 60 seconds, but the game never tells you that, so I just thought it kept crashing on me. Oh well. It took a while, but I did it eventually. While this part isn't inherently dark or scary, the visuals are still vastly different from what you'd expect from Winnie the Pooh. I know I've said it a lot and everyone else online is saying it too, but it really cannot be understated how bizarre of a tone this game has for what it is. I've played less scary horror games for God's sake, which I guess says more about the horror game, but still. Anyway, the next set of Piglet's friends were easier to rescue. I don't know if there was a time limit here, but I did it on my first try, so I'm inclined to say there wasn't, or at the very least it's a more relaxed time limit. Eeyore does tell Piglet he should have let him die, which, hey man, after this I get it. Anyway, everyone is rescued, the big boss is defeated, everyone can go back to being happy, and Piglet can continue life with more confidence than ever. Hooray. And that is it. Piglet's Big Game. A tie-in to the movie Piglet's Big Movie, both of which designed for kids and rated 3. Honestly, a very fun game. Maybe not the most engaging for a man of my age, but if I was a kid, well older than 3, I'd have still really enjoyed that. I think the scariness isn't inappropriate for kids, I just think it's absolutely bizarre, and the tonal whiplash you get is ridiculous. The music is insane, and it turns out that some of the foreboding music was ripped straight from Silent Hill 3 and then reused again in the recent Silent Hill 2, which is hilarious. But yeah, that's all I got to say on it really. The Dutch camera angles, the fixed camera angles, the survival horror, slow walking and limited attacks just make for a really bizarre game that actually is kind of really good. Anyway, thank you for watching. I have a cold that I need to nurse, so until next time, stay pooey, stay depressed, stay Piglet, and I'll see you in the next one.